right, everybody, thanks for joining me here at PowerModz. We always get questions this time of year about snowmobiles. Lou, I'm looking at an Arctic Cat, I'm looking at this Yamaha, I'm looking at the Do. How do I know if it's a good machine? Which one's better? I can pick between the 800R, the 800 P-Tech, the HO. What's better? Well, we're going to go over a few things. I have done videos on this in the past, but you know what? Even I learn things from now and then, and I've learned and discovered even more about these beasts. This is just a good old Skidoo. It's a 2004 MXZ Rev, right? 2003? But, oh, he did the beaver tail delete on it. That's right. That's why I was thinking about this. We'll go over that too. 2004 800, very plain, but it's something that you're probably going to run into. A lot of the guys that watch our channel like older sleds. So they're out looking at them and then they contact me, and Lou, I got a real piece of junk. What'd I do wrong? Well, there are a few things we'll go over. Might not cover everything, but I'm gonna try to do my best. All right, so let's get to it. Whenever you buy a sled, you're looking at the price. You see a sled like this, you know, even these old 2003s, 4s, 5s, whatever, they're still going for a few grand. 3,000, anywhere from 2,500 up to 4 grand, 4,500 I've seen. That's a lot of money for such an old sled. You know, it's 14 years old. It's kind of crazy. It might seem like a good deal because everything looks nice and shiny. They've done a nice polish job on it. You know, the guy treated it really well, but there are things that are going to cost you money. And whenever I look at an old sled like this, whenever I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to buy that, I go in with the conception that I'm going to spend at least $1,000 on that sled. That way, I'm not going to be disappointed when I have to spend $1,400 or $1,500 because it was only 500 bucks over my budget. And there are reasons for that. We'll start at the skis. You're looking at these skis, you think everything's great. The C&A Pros, great ski, look good, but it needs carbides. I went under there and I felt them. Look at that. The carbides are flat. Can you see that? So those carbides are flat. That's $100. That's 100 bucks right there. You got to look at the bushings in here, the ski rubbers. Sometimes they're split. One of those are coming out. That's $20, $30. Grab onto the ski. Give her one of these. Hold the steering column. There's not too much movement in that. That's not that bad. They can be a lot looser than that. And what that might indicate is some worn tie rod ends here, rod ends. Maybe there might be play in the upper spindle ends. See, I see that. There's a little bit of play in that one right there. And you're thinking, well, you know what, that's not that bad. But it's going to add up. By the time you pay for shipping, or even if you don't pay for shipping, you get it locally, it's still going to add up, cost you a lot of money. You got to check out these lower ones as well. Now, he's got some Fox float shocks on there, Evol shocks. That's pretty good. The original ones, if they were original on here, they're most likely shot. So if you just push down on the front of the sled, you want to watch how they rebound. Or are they real springy? If they just sort of go boing boing, or there's a little bit of oil leaking out the side, that means the front shocks are done. A lot of guys don't care about shocks. They sort of just, you know, if they're there and they sort of go up and down, they think they're good, but they're not. It's not really the way they're supposed to be. They need to work properly. They need to have the charge in there so they soak up the bumps and do what they're supposed to do for handling on the trails and off the trails. Especially with these revs, I know I've gone over this a lot before. You got to check. I haven't seen a rev yet without a bent nun. The nun is this metal area up in here, just in front of the kind of bulkhead. It kind of collapses when you take a frontal impact on here or on this lower A-arm. Sometimes those carbides are really strong or really fresh and they grab onto a rock and they tweak this thing. They pull this right back and they throw off the geometry. They bend that nun. Depending on what side it's on, it can screw up your clutches, just your distance between the clutch sheaves, or the clutch, the primary and the secondary clutch. So it's going to affect, well, I know Keely, he bent one of his, he bent his nun the first time he did it. It took 6 belts to get home. 6 belts he blew on the way home. Pretty nuts. Easy way to check for that. Take your finger, just pick any spot on the shock and compare it from one side to the next. I'm just using the tip of my finger right there. I bring it over here to the other side, and this one here has got a bent none. I can't get my finger in the same way. This one's way closer. I mean, it's not the worst I've seen. I've seen the A-arm in contact with the shock. You got to be careful with these Fox floats, because if there's any chipping on this coating here, every time the shock passes that through that seal, it'll lose a bit of a charge in it. So you're going to have to rebuild that shock or get it coated or whatever, or just buy a whole new shock. But that's one way to check. So if you're buying a sled for $3,500 and it's got a bent none, that's a really bad way to start. I've always said, oh, here's another way to check. Just now that I'm looking at it here. Here, take a look at this, Simon. See this door coming from this side right here? See this door here? So if we close the door, or this panel, bam. See the transition here between these two pieces? It's fairly symmetrical all the way down. Just take a mental note of it, and let's go to the other side and take a look at that. Oh, and this little panel is touching that. There's no space between that. So that there is a really easy way to tell that none is bent. So you spent $3,500, but now you've got a bent none. Now you need to put a brace kit in it, take everything apart. You're going to spend the first month of your riding season fixing your sled. Yep. You want to check these boots. You want to make sure they're good. Mine are falling apart. You want to make sure that they're not coming outside of this bracket here, this retainer bracket. Because what happens is if you have a tear in that, snow gets inside, snow dust gets inside through that boot, settles down on the inside of there, and then it warms up, drips down, freezes, and then it binds up your steering, and then you're going to have issues on that cold ride home where you can't steer. Been there, done that. Check your Arm bushings as well. It's a good thing you just lift up the sled, put a jack, well, you got to watch this bumper, but lift up the front and then just rock the arms back and forth. I can feel a little bit of play in there as that is. I always look for certain things when it comes to sleds. Number one, who I'm buying it from. If it's an older fella, sort of who used it to go to the ice fishing hut or just for the odd weekend rip, you can usually tell. But if you got something that's got a whole bunch of funky little add-ons, a bunch of stickers, PowerModz stickers maybe, and some other stuff, risers, handlebar risers up to here, and funky stuff all over it. And it's a kid, you know that they've pounded the tar out of it. So keep that in mind. Always check here. Check this muffler, check the exhaust, make sure that there's no dents in here. Sometimes they'll take a frontal impact, they'll replace this stuff, and the exhaust is still bent up. Overall condition in the front end, just check it out, take a good look. Pop all the doors, let the light get in there, take your flashlight, or everybody's got a cell phone. If you can't see something, turn on your light, go inside there, and take a picture of it, and then magnify it. Then you can see what it is you're dealing with. But look at that motor. That motor's nice and clean. It's very nice and clean. Right on. What'll happen is, with these older machines, especially the ZX, is because they're getting up there in age. And these ones here, depending on how they're treated, underneath this protective covering right here, there's like a fiberglass mat. And it's in contact with the exhaust. And if you're trailering it a lot, or it goes through a whole bunch of temperature fluctuations, or if it's left out in the grass, what happens is that exhaust actually just rots through underneath there because there's moisture in there, it gets trapped. I can see that there's quite a bit of moisture, and you can see, let me see that right there. Look at that. So this is the union. Can you see that, Simon? Yep. So there's that union there. Hold on. That exhaust it could be rotten in there, and a lot of times they are. Take a look at the springs, make sure everything's good. Look around in the bottom for anything that might have dropped in, broken off, sitting in the bottom of this. Sometimes there are indicators that, you know, there's work been done, there's a bunch of rivet heads, that kind of stuff. You want to look for that. You want to look for something fresh that somebody's done. The last 800 I bought, Smoochy, that is now the rev we have out there. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but somebody pulled the little pluggy thing here off the odometer on it. So I couldn't see how many miles were on it, but I could see how many hours. I couldn't see how many miles or kilometers. So I rigged up something, I pressed it, and it was what, 26,000, 36,000? It was anyway, it was a lot. But little tricks are played. Not saying that they're necessarily playing tricks, but you know how it is. This machine's pretty clean. Look at that. First thing I do is take that off and I throw that away.
It's a one owner 2003, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a one owner 2003. The guy is really taking good care of it. And there we go. It's nice if it comes with a spare belt. He's got a belt on it. It's a Skidoo belt. You want to make sure that the belt is good. If the belt's not good, and if you always need a spare belt. If the belt's bad and you need a spare belt, you're looking at, well, if they're Skidoo belts, you're looking at, what, 400 bucks. That's a lot of money. We can get aftermarket belts for it for 120 bucks. That's still 240 bucks by the time you're said and done. It was just sort of, you can check the belt condition, make sure there's no windings coming through. I know we're getting right into it, boys, but this is meat and potatoes snowmobile kind of stuff that you really got to know. You're going to save a pile of money by just going over this kind of stuff. Grab that.
The belt's upside down.
The belt is upside down. Yeah, look, see, I mean, not a big deal, but look, there's directional arrows on it. It says that the belt's supposed to go that way. The clutch turns this way, so the belt should go that way. In this application, the windings, oh, this belt is no good. See that? See, the threads come out. So when this belt goes, because it's on this way, the winding's gonna come out and it's gonna wrap around the clutch, and then it's gonna pull the belt right apart, and sometimes it gets back in behind the clutch and it screws up the seal and it makes a real mess. It's gotta be on the right way. I mean, this is cursory. If you really wanted to check out the condition of your clutches, you wanna pull everything off. But let's say you're just in some guy's driveway, you know, you wanna make sure that you're gonna do as much as you can. Another thing is, check this out. If you pull in the guy's driveway, I always tell everybody, if I'm gonna go look at a sled, make sure you don't start it before I get there. I wanna see it when it's nice and cold. I don't want it all warmed up just like a car. Never go and buy a vehicle in the winter that's been warmed up. Not a good thing. They may have started it up with booster cables. Who knows what they did to get it going. They may have sprayed quick start, ether, whatever to get it going. You don't want that. You wanna see how it starts when it's cold, especially a snowmobile, right? I give the good old clutches a rockin'. I check those jack shaft bearings. Grab that primary clutch. And what I do is come around this side there or something. Take that door right off. There. So if you grab this clutch, just do one of these. Checking for movement in those motor mounts. A bit of play in that one. And I'm listening for movement in this clutch itself. Clutch is good. Clutch is nice and clean actually. But I don't see any side to side play. There's no movement of the crank. But it's just that, I don't know if you can see that. I mean, motor mounts are gonna have a little bit of movement in them, but you just wanna make sure that there's not too much. Take a look at your reeds, your reed boots. This is what usually goes on sleds that causes the leaning out right there. These are nice V-force reeds with what look to be fairly good boots. So everything looks to be good in there. So you don't have to spend $400 on reed boots and reeds right off the bat anyway. Look at everything. Make sure there are no cracks in any of this overstructure.
No signs of leaks.
Yep, no signs of leaks. It's nice and clean. See, all around the exhaust is even nice and clean. There's a little bit of oil up here, but you know what? It's gonna come out of somewhere. You're kind of looking to see if the young lads have been jumping this thing, flying over ditches, and you know, seeing how they're kind of punishing it. You can usually tell how it's been abused by this piece of metal right here on both sides. If this is really bent up, that means they've been pounding rocks pretty hard underneath here, and it bends pushes up through the belly pan, and it tweaks that a little bit. The thing I like to do is prop up the back end and see if you can turn this over by hand, or turn that secondary clutch by hand, and just see how freely everything rolls. You want to see the condition of these. If the track were off the ground, these would be loose, the idlers. And this one up here too. That's loose. The bearings toast in there. You can tell just by doing that. So it's going to need probably idlers all around. This wheel's cracked. You can't see it there, but behind my finger, this idler wheel is cracked. All that costs money. I don't know what these are, 20 bucks a piece. You know, the bearings, there's a cost to those. Rear shocks, same thing as the front shocks. Make sure they're not leaking. If there's oil dripping down the shock here, then you're into problems. But what's going on here? Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, you see that? Oh, so that shock, the bushing is worn right out of it. And that's gonna be toast. Can you see that, Simon?
Yeah.
It's worn out. It's totally ovaled that hole out, and it was almost ready to fall off. I'm pretty sure that shock isn't going to be repairable, just the way it's damaged. Take a look up in there. Of course, you want to check out your track condition. You know, when you're going over this, make sure that there's no real tears. Sometimes there are chunks missing. Sometimes they'll hide the broken part of the track up inside the tunnel. You can't see it, and they'll hope you can't see it, or you won't see it. But a new tracks are expensive these days. You're looking at anywhere between 600 bucks for you know, a really good sale, up to 1,000 bucks, depending on what it is, what kind of track. Some tracks are more expensive. We've spent 1,600 bucks on a track. As the beaver tail delete, so you put this on. Pretty cool, looks nice, but just not attached very well. There's just a very small little bit where this attaches. We're gonna build a plate up here, fix that up for the guy. But, you know, that needs attention. Check out the seat condition, make sure there are no tears in it. Seat cover is 160 bucks. So it's gonna need new sliders. And the reason I can tell is,
There's a little bit left of the line right here.
there's a little bit left of the line, but as you get in here in between these two and up front, it just gets really thin. So these are your usual wear points. You know, when you have, the suspension is going to have to come out. When it's out, replace the sliders. And you know, when that suspension comes out, if these springs have never been changed, I would change those, just because they can only go up and down so many times before they just give out. That's just the way they're made. It's just a metal fatigue kind of thing. And when they break, sometimes they go down and then they rip your track apart. Or you can see what's happened here. These little guides, that spring is supposed to be right up inside that. That's supposed to be in there like that. But as it's gone up and down a zillion times, it's starting to wear its way through. You want to check all your little cross shafts. Make sure that they're not egging out or wearing out these holes all the way through, or else you're in for a set of rails. All right, moving along. Check the coolant, see how much is in there. If sometimes guys who aren't really mechanically inclined, they're selling a sled because they don't know what's wrong with it. It's just not running right. Down on power, warms up, gets worse. Really hard to start, something like that. Sometimes they don't even know to check the rad or the coolant. Check the coolant on it. Make sure that it's not too dirty. If you see a line of black in there that's sort of moving around, it could be head gasket gone, some exhaust fluid or exhaust gases mixing in with it. So keep a good look at that, take a good look at that. Brake pads, these ones are good. There's always a lot of play in these. Guys ask me about revs, you know, it's always jingling, that's okay. It's the keyway that's on the shaft. They just get loose. And that amount of play right there isn't a bad thing. That's all good. Check for filings on that fluid. The actual fluid's clear, pretty clear itself. I like to grab the secondary clutch and just roll it back and forth and see how much slack is in that chain. If you ask the owner and he's never had the chain case apart, it's going to need bearings. It's going to need upper and lower bearings on both sides, axle bearings and all. And then you're looking at, you know, there's a couple $100 in bearings. Motor-wise, anything else? Same kind of deal over here. Just check for wear in there. You can check for leaks from the chain case. If it's got electric start, make sure the battery's good. Make sure that it is good and cold and that thing's going to start up without a booster on it. If not, you're looking at $100 for a battery, $110, whatever it is. Check the cables, make sure that everything rolls good. Check the brake, make sure that it's good and that it's got good pressure on it. Check the cable, the choke cable, make sure there's not too much movement in that. Just take a good look at the machine. This is all before you even start it. If somebody won't let you check the compression on the snowmobile, just walk away. I wouldn't buy a snowmobile I can't check the compression on. I've always said, I say a lot of things apparently, but I've always said that somebody doesn't usually sell a snowmobile because it's running really great. Like you're having the time of your life, you're gonna sell the thing that you're having the most fun with. Doesn't usually roll that well. Even if they give you an excuse like they're, you know, moving up or trying out a different sled or whatever. Check for compression. Just go online before you go and check out what should be good running compression for these engines. This Rotax, it should be up 135, 145. I think up and around there. Polarises are a little low, but it all depends on the motor. Just check the compression, use a good compression tester. All of them kind of maybe don't always show this, they're not completely accurate is what I'm trying to say. But make sure that they're within just a few pounds of each other. That's the important part. You don't want one that's really down. This is an electric start. That's really easy to pull over. Like really easy to pull over. We'll check the compression on that later anyway. But check the pull start, the cable, or the rope, the pull start rope. Make sure it's good. That's gonna probably break on you. Sometimes if they're electric start, these are already stripped out inside. You won't know it until the electric start doesn't work and you go to pull it and it doesn't engage. Make sure that works. Obviously check all your controls, start the machine up, check the lights, make sure that the security key works on it. And you gotta make sure that when you buy a snowmobile for somebody, that you're buying it from the actual person whose name is on the ownership. If they're trying to sell it for their friend, it doesn't work that way. It could be stolen, who knows? It's, you know, you're not gonna call the guy a liar, but you're definitely not gonna go away with that sled. It's not right. You can't sell somebody else's snowmobile for somebody else, so don't do it. You gotta have the ownership when you leave, and it's gotta be signed, and it's gotta be bought from the person that you're buying it from. And you can, I mean, it's a good idea to get a picture of them with their license, right? Make sure that it's actually the guy who you're getting it from. There are a lot of stories out there of guys buying sleds, and you know what? It wasn't their sled in the first place. And then when you go to register it, the MTO or whatever licensing bureau says, hey, that snowmobile was sold or was stolen, and we're gonna have to call the police and sorry, but we're not giving you this ownership and we want the sled. That's how that rolls. I always seem to get the question, I'm looking at this sled, it's got 4,500 miles on it, is it good? Is the 800 motor a good motor? Is the 600 SDI motor a good motor? Is the 800 Polaris motor a good motor? Is the 900 Polaris motor a good, you know, I get all these questions. Well, some motors are bad. You can do your research online. some of these Rotaxes, I've talked about this before, some have gone a long time without any issues, and some get 2,500, 3,500 miles out of them. Some Polarises, you got to change the pistons a lot sooner than later. We all know about all those issues. So do your research online and figure that stuff out. Can I tell you if a snowmobile is good over the internet or over an email? No, I can't. But you gotta sort of use your spider senses when you're dealing with the person who's trying to sell the snowmobile. Do they need to sell that snowmobile? Do they need the money? How anxious are they to get rid of it? You know, what's it like when you're rolling up to their place? You can usually tell if guys are hobbling sleds together. There's carcasses all over the place, so they can just throw one together, get it running, and sell it to you so they can get some extra cash for the weekends, you know? So you got to be careful who you're buying from. That's a big part of the story, and it's going to tell you a lot about how the sled is. So there you go.
There's always more sleds out there, you know.
Yeah, exactly. There's always more sleds out there. This time of year, there's all kinds of them for sale. And if there's not the exact one that you want right now, just stand by and just wait, because one's going to come up. This is crucial, man. This bent nun, I'm telling you, you got to start pulling motors. You got to get in there to put bracing on. And as soon as you start pulling motors, you're going to have to replace motor mounts, and you know, a spring's going to break, and an exhaust donut is going to bust. It's going to be euchred. So you're going to need to spend a lot of money on these. Spending less isn't always good. Let's just say that. But anyway, I just thought I'd go over a few things. I'm sure I'll probably think of more in the future, and I'll let you guys know. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. It's a little bell button on the video that says, hey, Louis got more videos, another one just came out, and just because YouTube turns that off automatically for some reason. I don't know what that's all about. They're real buggers like that. So do that, subscribe, check us out, www.powermodz.com. We can get you any parts and pieces, reeds, studs. We can get you belts, we can get you snowmobile suits, we can get you fur products, we can get you stuff from Botswana, from New Zealand. We can get you Uncle Ned's car. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. It's been a long day. All right, but thanks for watching. This is going to be a good sled. I mean, look how good a shape it's in. I said to the guy who owns it, I said, you can tell that's not a PowerModz sled. It's too clean. One owner. I think we should do the seat mod for when he gets here, right, Simon? Yeah, I know he watches these videos. Yeah, we'll do the seat mod. Cut this down, shave that down with the electric knife. Yeah, take all this stuff off, put some PowerModz stuff on the side. Drill some holes in it, put some holes in this snow flap here, make it a little lighter. All right, let's roll.